Hey folks, Matthew Weiss here, and I'm here on behalf of Produce Like a Pro. Hey, I just completed a 4-tutorial series on mixing urban music, and those genres include R&B, dance pop, urban pop, and hip hop. In this video, I want to show you something about hip hop that I think is really important to understand, and it's very counterintuitive. I'm going to play a little bit of this record, and I'm going to show a typical processing that one might do. All right?
Brown on my kid.
Cooking on that hot plate, sleeping on the floor. If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. If it wasn't for my auntie, I wouldn't have nowhere to go. Mama gave me all she had since the day that I was born. My nigga D-boy gave me that Rolex, first day that I was home. My nigga couch was my house, shout out my low. Yo, cooking on that hot plate, sleeping on the floor. If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door.
So this vocal clearly was recorded in an untreated room. You can hear what sounds like a pretty dramatic slapback on the vocal. That is not being added by me. That is actually in the recording itself.
My couch was my house. Shout out my nigga low. Yo, cooking on that hot plate.
And if we do any compression to this, it's going to make that room tone even more dramatic and bring it out even more than it already is, which is frankly plenty. So how would we go about treating this? Well, the first thing I would probably do is pull up something like either Isotope or maybe Clarity VX from Waves. This is a great plugin. And I would set this so that I could take that tone down. So I'd set this to singing. It's rapping, not singing, but close enough. And I just start turning off this D-reverb knob.
If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. If it wasn't for my auntie, I wouldn't have nowhere to go. Mama gave me all she had.
It's pretty remarkable how well that works. Once I've done that, then I would probably do a little bit of dynamic control here. So maybe just RVox for simplicity's sake. You know, it's nice and effective.
If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. If it wasn't for my auntie, I wouldn't have nowhere to go. Mama gave me all she had since the day that I was born. If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. If it wasn't for my auntie, I wouldn't have nowhere to go.
And then probably a little EQ to kind of balance things out. So there's definitely some unwanted sub information that we would get rid of here.
If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door.
There's something in the mids we hear like right off of the word catch. It becomes pretty apparent.
If I catch another charge.
Right? If I catch all has this kind of like whoop kind of thing.
If I catch.
So we're going to loop this up real quick.
If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. If it wasn't for my auntie, I wouldn't have nowhere to go. Mama gave me all she had since the day that I was born. My nigga D-boy gave me that Rolex, first day that I was home.
So, okay, pretty basic kind of treatment right there. So let's bring that in and let's just listen to how that feels.
Kid.
Cooking on that hot plate, sleeping on the floor. If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. If it wasn't for my auntie, I wouldn't have nowhere to go. Mama gave me all she had since the day that I was born. My D-boy gave me that Rolex, first day that I was home.
So I would say this sounds not bad for something that I just kind of slapped together in like 20 seconds, right? I would probably work with it from here. I would say, you know, we would want to build some character into it, give it maybe a little saturation in the highs and lows, maybe some kind of grit, something like that. Maybe a little extra compression just to kind of get a little bit of like pump to it, a little bit of groove to it, something like that. And all of that's well and good. But I think that there's a mentality problem that we need to backtrack way on here. And that is immediately my thought process was, well, how do I clean things up? Not, does this feel good? Does this have a certain hip hop energy to it? What's the vibe that I want? Maybe I can be experimental. Maybe I can try things. Now, I go way back when it comes to hip hop. I've been a hip hop head since the early 90s, and I've been working on hip hop music since the late 90s. So the era of hip hop that I'm coming from very much embraces this idea that wrong is right. And I believe that that still permeates rap music today. That in order to get things right, you need to be going about it in a way that bucks the trend. I see hip hop and punk rock as being very similar in their mentalities. Now, not all hip hop is like that. Some hip hop really looks to be very clean and pristine. I call that white sneaker hip hop, and there's a place for that. But a lot of hip hop, I think, wants to be gritty, wants to be edgy, wants to challenge things. So I'm going to put RVox back on here. I'm going to take the gate out, and we're just going to listen to it with a little compression on.
Cooking on that hot plate, sleeping on the floor. If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. If it wasn't for my auntie, I wouldn't have nowhere to go. Mama gave me all she had since the day that I was born.
Putting aside sonics completely, there's something that's a little compelling about how that sounds. That slapback kind of works in the record. It's unintentional, but maybe there's a way that things could be framed to take advantage of that. So when I'm doing the actual processing for this mix, instead of going to a drier sound, I'm actually turning the ambience up. The very first thing I'm doing here is bringing out that room tone.
Cooking on that hot plate, sleeping on the floor. If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door.
Then I'm adding my grit, controlling my sibilances, and then getting rid of some of that nonsense that's happening in the mids. But notice that I'm actually doing a boost across the mids, broadly speaking. I'm getting rid of that gunky stuff that we heard before, because to me, that's bad as in bad, not bad as in good. We want bad as in good. So I'm adding in a little bit of energy there, but I'm also taking out the annoying stuff here.
Cooking on that hot plate, sleeping on the floor.
And then getting my compression going, which I'm doing in series. I'm using an 1176 and RVox in a row to kind of get more control over the vocal without necessarily making any of them produce like unwanted artifacts.
Cooking on that hot plate, sleeping on the floor. If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. If it wasn't for my auntie, I would.
So before?
Cooking on that hot plate, sleeping on the floor. If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. If it wasn't for my auntie, I wouldn't have nowhere to go. Mama gave me all she had since the day that I was born.
So what my processing is ultimately doing here is it's highlighting the vocal. It's bringing all the good stuff that we want, but it's not being squeamish about that room tone that would normally be considered, and still I would probably consider, a mistake. But let's hear it in the context of the record.
Cooking on that hot plate, sleeping on the floor. If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. If it wasn't for my auntie, I wouldn't have nowhere to go.
I like the natural front to back image that it's producing. I like that sense of ambience, so much so that I'm actually tempted to add more ambience to it.
Cooking on that hot plate, sleeping on the floor. If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. If it wasn't for my auntie, I wouldn't have nowhere to go. Mama gave me all she had since the day that I was born.
Now, people will say that you shouldn't put reverb on rap vocals. That's one of those things where, like, oftentimes it will be true. A lot of the times we want rap vocals to be straight up in your face, you know, really raw sounding, but you can make something really raw sounding and have reverb, and this is a case of that working. So there aren't necessarily the hard and fast rules that we might pick up if we're just kind of like skimming the genre and just kind of picking up the basics of it. We certainly can indulge in being experimental and having fun with the way that we're doing our processing.
Cooking on that hot plate, sleeping on the floor. If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. If it wasn't for my auntie, I wouldn't have nowhere to go.
Now, does it sound like our rapper is on the other side of the room? Yes, but I'm kind of okay with that. This gets even a little bit better actually when I bring in the overdub. So I had my original overdub. I used Vocaline, which is magic software. It's just absolutely incredible. Lines up the vocal for me, and then I'm using the same processing on the dub so that I have that same room tone being coupled in on itself.
Cooking on that hot plate, sleeping on the floor. If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. If it wasn't for my auntie, I wouldn't have nowhere to go. Mama gave me all she had since the day that I was born. My boy gave me that Rolex, first day that I was home.
So with things so tightly aligned, I am noticing that the second vocal is clashing with the main vocal a little bit. There's something in the mids that's a little hashy and weird. So I might bring this in and kind of clean that up. It's actually kind of in the upper mids.
Cooking on that hot plate, sleeping on the floor. If I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. If it wasn't for my auntie, I wouldn't have nowhere to go. Mama gave me all she had since the day that I was born.
Nice. I really like that. So this is a case of really indulging in an imperfect recording, and this is going to happen very often. A lot of the times there's microphones being used on people who have very face-forward voices. This is really common. The rapper is like projecting through the front of their face and using a U87, which grabs that front of face tone. And so we might want to resist that by cutting a bunch of like 1.5K, 2K, but sometimes it's actually better to lean into it and make an almost telephonic sound because it gives you a certain attitude and it's sort of grit and gravel to the energy that maybe isn't sonically as pleasing, but energy-wise is much better feeling. The other thing that's really cool about embracing these kinds of flaws and turning them into strengths and making them feel deliberate, which is what the mentality here is that we can also use that as a great source of contrast and movement. So when we get into, say, the verse, maybe we want to go to the other direction and cut that ambience down. So we can go from an ambient vocal to a tighter vocal, and it would sound like this. So another great advantage of thinking this way is that we can use it as a really powerful source of contrast. In something that is generally speaking a loop, which many hip-hop beats are, there's not a lot of variation, so I can take advantage of the fact that I've built a lot of reverb and room tone into the chorus to do the opposite in the verse. So in the verse here, my first move is Clarity VX, but this time I am cutting the reverb. So let's play a little bit of that to get a sense of how that feels.
On the floor, if I catch another charge, 7 years to the door. Got a young nigga with me getting active, brazen my nigga no op shit. Cocaine, shit get hard like concrete. She on fleek, taking a seat, rapping on beats, I'm in the street.
So we go from this vocal that feels like it's farther away to this vocal that feels like it's very close. And I think that that's a great contrast. I think that it adds a sort of dimension to the record that otherwise wouldn't be there. So bottom line is anything that you think might not sound good might feel good. So sometimes when you get that inkling that you should like unwork something, that should almost be a green light to be like, oh, maybe I should do more of it. Roomy vocal, increase the room tone. Telephonic vocal, nasal vocal, increase the nasalness, increase the telephonicness. Clipped distorted vocal, add a little more distortion. It doesn't always work, but when it does, you unlock a potential in the sound that can be a lot more exciting than just cleaning it up and going from there. All right, cool. So if you dig this video, hit that like button. If you want to catch more videos like this, subscribe to Produce Like a Pro. And once again, I have a 4-part tutorial series that is out that you can check out if you want to dig really deep into how to mix records like this. All right, thanks for joining me. Take care. Till next time.